Hello, I'm Greg Sanders, Group Publisher at Food News Media and QSR Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, The Impact of the Employee Experience on the Hourly Workforce. With unemployment at historic lows and wages stagnant, today's workforce has more options than ever before on where employees want to spend their working hours. Now, understanding what employees want from their work experience is critical for companies to succeed, especially in the quick service industry where the employee experience and engagement can be uniquely difficult. So in today's webinar, we're going to learn more about employee experience best practices and how technology can help enhance and innovate on the experience. And one quick housekeeping note before we get started, we will be taking your questions at the end of the program, and you can use the functionality on the webinar screen to submit a question. You can ask a question at any point during the program, so even though we will be answering them at the end, we encourage you to ask questions as they come to you. So now to begin, our presenter today is Tim Leonard, Chief Product Officer at Talent Reef. Tim is a proven software visionary and entrepreneur with 25 years of software as a service experience in the human resources, recruiting, and talent management space. Tim was the founder of the leading social recruiting platform, Talent Reef, in 2009. Tim, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you also to QSR Magazine for working with us to put this webinar together today. Real excited to be chatting with everyone about what we believe is a top-of-mind, engaging topic, the impact of employee experience on the hourly workforce. As Greg mentioned, my background, been in the HR space, recruiting, talent management for 15 plus years now. I drive the product roadmap, strategy, and innovation for Talent Reef, and over the past 10 years have been working squarely in the service industry space, providing these types of solutions to the market. So really excited about the opportunity to share some of my insights with everyone here today. As Greg mentioned, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions, and I just love that. So hopefully everyone, no pun intended, is engaged, and we have some Q&A at the end, which we'll definitely have some time for. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, I'm going to do a very quick overview about who Talent Reef is. We're not going to make this a sales pitch, really more focused today on sharing some meaningful market insights with you around the employee experience and engagement challenges, and some of the best practices, as Greg mentioned, that we see in the marketplace. We of course will touch on how Talent Reef and our innovative technology can organize employee engagement outreach that's really required in our view. And we'll also talk a little bit about the more traditional things that folks are using to engage the workforce, and we'll highlight some of the limitations with some of those approaches. Not that they're all bad. In fact, we still promote, in some cases, a hybrid of some of the more legacy ways of doing things combined with more modernized approaches. And then finally, we'll really hone in, though, on more of the modern innovations and some of those insights into how technology and best practices can really give you a leg up on your competition in the marketplace. So real quick background about Talent Reef, for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We are a software company, software as a service. Been in business now for over 10 years, and what makes us really unique is a couple things. First and foremost, we have a combined solution that helps our customers both recruit and retain talent, again, in one unified platform. And we just don't see other companies in the space doing that. And then our very square focus with the service industry and those verticals such as QSR. And really QSR type companies is really where we got our start 10 years ago and have just gone very wide and deep. We now power the recruitment and talent management engines for north of 70,000 sites across the country, and they're also expanding internationally. So that's a little bit about Talent Reef and our focus. And again, not to make this a product pitch, but certainly to at least introduce a little bit more about what we do to whet the appetite, especially as we get into some of the market insights that I'm going to be sharing. Again, we live and breathe recruiting and retention for your type business day in and day out. So really we have on the recruiting side, which is in the green, we have what we call Recruit 2.0. You can think of this as all the modernized mechanisms for sourcing, engaging, attracting talent with social media, digital media, and most recently text-based recruiting capabilities. We have a applicant tracking system and onboarding purpose-built again for the service industry, high volume hiring, in particular a focus on decentralized and hourly based hiring, where speed to hire and speed to really getting someone through the process in a compliant way wins the day. And speaking of compliance, we also have I-9 E-Verify built right into our platform, along with WOTC tax credits and background checks, as well as assessments that are purpose-built for the types of individuals you might be hiring. And the nice thing to note here is this is all packaged up in a seamless platform so that your applicants and managers really just have one place where they can do all of those tasks. On the blue side here is really our post-hire or our retain side of our solution, and that encompasses employee portal and self-service. Kind of the notion of driving your employees to one dashboard to do many of the important things they want to do, including updating their forms, handling performance management and training tasks, as well as engagement. And then we have specific functionality to support employee engagement and performance, as well as training and development, and then really all of the data and metrics that you would want to see that kind of accommodates all of these different product features, so that you have a really good dashboard view into what's happening on the recruiting and retain side of your platform. So that's a little plug there in terms of what Talent Reef does, and it'll be germane to some of the insights that I'll be sharing here. So let's get into really the meat of the presentation. What is employee experience? So I'm going to actually be going through our view of employee experience. Again, we live this day in and day out within the service industry, and I think we have a very, very good view and unique view in some ways into how we view employee experience being kind of right in the middle of both your applicant experience and your customer experience. So we kind of call this the experience ecosystem. And it's really driven by the fact that we believe we live today in a culture where experience matters more than just about everything. And when we think about the service industry in particular, that matters most to these three core constituents that you serve. You serve applicants, employees, and of course customers. And when I really think about it and net things out, you're in the business of acquiring and retaining customers and acquiring and retaining employees. I'm going to spend a few more minutes actually on this slide because I think it's a really good setup slide for the follow-on things I'm going to be talking about. And I like to actually start with the customer experience, despite the fact that today Talent Reef doesn't offer any specific technology in the area of supporting customer experience and helping you deliver that experience from a technology standpoint and maybe measure that customer experience. It's really important that we discuss this persona because it really, like I said, drives what we're building in terms of our software to support the employee experience, which ultimately the employees are the ones delivering that exceptional customer experience for your business. So as we look at the customer experience, when we think of the service industry and the restaurant and even the QSR segment in particular, let's face it, things just have been never been this dynamic and evolving at such a rapid pace with all sorts of different macro, microeconomics at play. First and foremost, your customers have greater choices than ever in terms of dining experiences. The lines are being blurred a little bit between QSR and fast casual and the like. Demand for menu optionality with things like accommodating dietary concerns. I mean, these are all front and center for your customers. And of course, the increase in home delivery. In my neighborhood, I constantly am now seeing Grubhub and DoorDash and the like delivering food to the home. And your customers, of course, expect that experience to be exceptional. And then, of course, the kind of shift towards mobile ordering. My daughter is a Gen Z, and I've got a couple millennial daughters as well. And I don't think we go to a Starbucks any longer without them doing a mobile order ahead of time. And for me, I'm stuck a little bit in the old ways where I prefer the experience of walking into the store and placing my order, right? But you now have to kind of balance convenience and experience together, and that really has impact on how you deliver those things to your customers. And of course, the proliferation of technology in the store is now a big consideration, and you can use it as either a real kind of weapon in your arsenal to compete for customers, or you can kind of lag behind. But certainly with Internet of Things, we're seeing kiosks and tablets and other desktop devices right on the table, and really making sure that you're on top of that will help give you that edge in delivering really a great customer experience. So when we think about what are all these dynamics and these macro, micro trends, how are they shaping things? Well, really, they're contributing to drive your customers' expectations, and how you deliver against these expectations is what I really look at as the customer experience. So really, this leads to the big point here, right? I know I've spent a bit of time on customer experience, and I'm gonna tie out at the end back on this slide and talk a bit about data and where we're headed as a company, but also from a kind of market insight standpoint, where I see the market trending over the next several years as it relates to really the power of business intelligence and data that is collected from the customer experience that then can be mapped to the employee and applicant experience and vice versa. So I'll spend some time on that at the end. But the big point for kind of the setup of employee experience and how that impacts your business, at the end of the day, your employees are your customer experience ambassadors, is really how I like to describe that. I came across a really relevant article recently from Gartner, and this is really about kind of the current trends in the retail segment of the service industry, but it applies to QSR and restaurant, of course, just as well. And the quote was, "Experience per square foot is the new metric," right? So in retail, we all know that it used to be sales per square foot or revenue per square foot, but really it's experience per square foot. Just like in the retail business, in the restaurant business, that experience that you deliver to your customer in contemplating all of these dynamics that we just covered is really what will win the day for you and your business. So when you think about how that impacts your employee experience and your employee's ability to deliver that employee experience, particularly in the restaurant QSR space, your employees need to know the menu and the menu options, and if there are any kind of dietary considerations. They need to make sure that when it comes to home delivery, that they're set up to package the product up in a way that it's delivered in a hot and fresh manner. They need to be able to handle mobile orders, which are distinctly different than handling in-store orders, right? They need to understand and learn how to operate any in-store devices that I mentioned that we see so commonplace now. I forgot to mention, POS systems with CRM capabilities, email marketing capabilities, and food lookup capabilities with different devices. They need to be able to operate those things and guide customers in their experience interacting with technology. And of course, beyond all of that, they need to be bought into your brand, and they need to be positive and courteous. It's amazing how those pleases and thank yous can really win the day. So what I'm leading up to, of course, is the reality in our businesses is that employees simply aren't engaged. There's a Gallup survey, and I'm betting a lot of you have seen this, that reports only 15 to 20% of workers are engaged today, right? So that's obviously a very, very low number when you think about what you're really aspiring to. And we know the impacts of disengaged employees and workforces these are very, very tangible and relatable to everyone on the phone, I'm sure. Things like high turnover, and then the direct cost of replacing those employees that have turned over, impact to morale with both their fellow employees as well as managers. Of course, staffing challenges that managers then are presented with as if they weren't hard enough. Pressure on managers really in general to then go find new talent and manage morale and those schedules. And then last but not least, negative impact to customer experience, which is why, again, I spent so much time on the setup slide because we really see how closely related these things all are. The same Gallup survey then goes on to report that companies with engaged employees see 147% higher profits earned than their competitors. Of course, this is clearly where we all strive and aspire to be, but as the data suggests, most businesses just aren't operating with a high level of employee engagement today. And how I term this really is I term this as the employee experience gap. And again, drawing from the way that these things really are mirror images in many ways, drawing from the customer experience, employee experience is really what you deliver versus what they expect. And when we think about your workforce today, it's driven now by such a big segment of millennials and Gen Z, making up the greatest percentage of employees in the workforce. We also see gig workers that are shaping the work experience and creating more challenges for all of our businesses. And then we also see that the baby boomers are returning to work, right? So you've got this kind of real broad spectrum of employee types with different behaviors and characteristics. But at the end of the day, whether you're in the baby boomer category or the Gen Z category, you're using a mobile phone. You have embraced social media, you read Yelp reviews, so you've been quote unquote Yelpified. You're used to ordering things on Amazon and they get shipped immediately and you can track them immediately, and everything is so streamlined and easy to use, right? So all of these things are shaping what these employees are expecting. They're expecting a sense of purpose. They want to be connected into your business goals. That's a really big thing, especially for millennials and Gen Z. They expect ongoing training and development. They expect real-time feedback. They expect continuous recognition. They want to have shared values with their company. They want flexibility, perhaps, in their scheduling. And last but not least, they want ongoing, transparent communications. As we'll discuss in a few upcoming slides as we really get into the meat of the presentation, we believe you really need a modernized technology approach to drive engagement with this modern workforce. So what is the punchline here? If you can get this right, that is, if you can create a highly engaged workforce, you should see direct impact to retention, profits, and the customer experience. And of course, I have not purposely ignored applicant. I'm touching this one last, but it's not any less important. Your applicant experience really is shaped so largely today by that customer experience and by the employee experience. We have transparency in our economy. So your applicants are going to Yelp, they're going to your website, they're going to Glassdoor. They're able to gain insights into what employees say about working at your place of business. So it's so important that these things are obviously in good shape, but that they are aligned with the way that you're promoting the job opportunities and the brand in your culture, in your outreach and engagement to your applicants. And really my last point here, and this is really touching very specifically on the applicant experience and employee experience from a technology standpoint, you really must make sure that everything first and foremost is mobile optimized. So that application process needs to be fully mobile optimized, whether it's from a snap code where somebody in the Gen Z population can hold up their mobile phone to a snap emoji on your storefront window, or on the employee side, if it's just sending out a communication to employees. Employees aren't delivered or issued laptops and typically don't have corporate email systems when they begin employment. So really that mobile phone is their lifeline to your company and to your messaging, and being able to communicate via mobile is obviously paramount to drive engagement. So from a technology standpoint, mobile optimization is paramount. Things being streamlined, getting back to kind of that Amazon, we've all been conditioned to expect, to few clicks to order something. Same way that when you're applying for a job, it should be a few clicks to apply for a job, or a few clicks to get feedback on how you're performing with your job. And then audio and video needs to be a key part of your applicant and employee experience. It's just where things are at today. 80% of the most engaging content is audio or video. And last but not least, of course, need to be social media friendly. I am going to spend much less time on the following slides, but that was kind of an important setup slide as I go through some of the other parts of the presentation. So when we think about the employee journey, again, we can compare and contrast this to the customer journey, where most of you are probably now using some form of technology to really capture what's happening at every touch point with your customer. How many times do they come into your store? If you're using a CRM, how often do they respond to an email that you send them to bring them back into the store? If you're running loyalty programs, how often are they participating in those loyalty programs and perhaps referring other people? So that same mindset is what we believe you need to be bringing into the employee journey and the employee experience, where you really are creating a blueprint from their first application all the way until they leave your business. So when we think about those different touch points, on the recruiting side, it's engaging with the candidate up front with the company and culture, using those videos and looking at what their assessment scores are, and how what the pre-screening looks like. So you're capturing that can be then used later in some of your training and development, and eventually with big data, understanding which employees have which backgrounds and came from which sources have been the most productive. And then tying the consumer experience to the candidate experience. So these are key touch points. The onboarding experience, this is where you hopefully will begin building excitement and joining the team, again, reinforcing the culture, using audio and video as ways to do that, and making sure you're keeping consistent the culture elements outlined during recruiting. And then training and development, providing on-demand development tools, assessing and developing skills for career pathing. These are all key touch points throughout that journey that you want to be able to capture, hopefully, in one system. And then feedback and recognition, real-time feedback for ongoing coaching and leveraging tools to recognize top employees. And we're going to get into this area in particular in some good detail. And then surveys, really, making sure you're tapping into the pulse of your employees and the health of your employees through very simple surveys, again, that are mobile optimized, that provide you that kind of finger on the pulse so you can understand what changes you might need to make, but also gives the employees the sense that they are included in that feedback and input loop, which is really important. But again, this is no different. You can use the same diagram here and just put different labels on this for how your customer experience works and how you might want to map that out. So in the next slide here, why companies should be thinking about employee experience. I've already addressed a lot of this in the upfront couple slides, but we know the impact that Amazon has had on people's expectations. And folks are, of course, always interested in compensation, but really it's much more about those other items I discussed around social responsibility, shared values, career path opportunities, ongoing training, development, and feedback. And these things are very uniquely difficult in the service industry, and I touched on this, but when we think about these decentralized models that we're all operating in, where store managers can kind of be on an island as their employees can be, it's really difficult without having corporate email systems in place and laptops issued at time of employment to do this without the proper technology, which is what we're going to be getting into. And as you can see the statistic here, employees are looking for feedback and kind of ongoing training and development from their employers as a key differentiator. So we're going to talk just for a very short time about traditional technology that is used to help engage workers. And again, this isn't about besmirching any other companies that are out there that might have a little bit more of a legacy feel to or approach to some of their software, because some of the traditional approaches to your employee engagement and experience that you deliver still can certainly be used. And we'll talk a little bit more about the coupling of some of those more traditional methods with more modernized methods and how that really wins the day. But certainly we're all familiar with the annual and biannual performance reviews. I would say in this case, in the hourly segment, certainly you don't want to wait 6 months or a year to be doing your first or second review with your employee. It's a good possibility they could not be there at that time. So in this case, those legacy systems that are really built for that more annual basis wouldn't work. But certainly doing a formal sit-down, leveraging technology to help guide you through that on a monthly basis, let's say, is very apropos and something we would highly recommend. And we offer that of course, in the Talent Reef platform. And the same goes with the yearly employee satisfaction surveys. I mean, these just don't work anymore, again, for those same reasons I just mentioned. But certainly the value of surveys is really, really important. And we believe surveying your employees, of course, on a more ongoing basis, is a foundational element of any successful employee experience and engagement program. As we look at employee self-service, we know traditionally employee self-service tools and platforms were really built more with HR in mind, and how can you make HR's life easier and more streamlined. What we see is a trend moving in the direction of really making the employee portal and self-service really built for the employee. Again, this gets back to things like making sure it's mobile optimized, that you have single click into taking any action, and communications that are more kind of streamed in a digest, or a daily notification that would drive the employee to their dashboard, as opposed to something that feels very clunky and that works really well potentially for the corporate world, but just doesn't suit the hourly employee. And then long training sessions. We know this. We've seen this, that complex curriculum-based training approaches really don't work for the most part in our industry. The notion of just-in-time training, which is something that we enable, is really more how we see winning the day. And you can kind of think examples of, if your business is just getting into the home delivery segment, taking advantage of that as a way to grow your business, you want to make sure your employees are trained on best practices around that. Everyone in your ecosystem has some involvement with delivering a good product when it comes to home delivery. So think about a just-in-time training that might have a video with a quiz wrapped around it that you can deliver to your employees' mobile device, and within a few minutes they're updated on what they need to be doing to support that new business workflow, as an example. And of course, when you think about things like menu changes and just the dynamic nature in general of your business, having a much more kind of lightweight platform for creating, and delivering, and managing training is really, really important. And it's something that we believe in, and we offer that in our platform. So let's shift a little bit now to what I think is really the exciting portion of the webinar today, which is the modern innovations. And here's where I get excited about sharing some of my insights. I travel around the country. I've talked to all of our large customers that are in the QSR and restaurant space in general, as well as other service industry verticals. I speak on panels and get out to all the trade shows and do a lot of reading. So for me, this is really an area of passion, and a place where I think with the right focus, businesses like yours can kind of take things to the next level if you do it right. And again, maybe some of you guys have already figured a lot of this out, which would be fantastic. So let's start with real-time feedback. This is a biggie, right? We talked about those, annual and semi-annual reviews. I recommend more of a monthly approach to doing those more formal reviews. But as I look at the performance management of today and how it's changed, I really view it as more of a progressive performance management approach, where you have almost like a Facebook timeline graph of the employee's journey, right? All of the different feedback, coaching, recognition, communications, how they're performing against goals, all of those things really tied now to a consolidated view of the employee's performance that really is living and breathing. And so real-time feedback, being able to, on the spot, let your employee know they did a great job with the new home delivery, or they really handled an angry customer. Or if it's constructive feedback, again, the same paradigm, right with the mobile phone, letting the employee know in a kind of a prefabricated way to make things easy for the store manager. But your uniform didn't meet specifications today. Would really like you to do XYZ, or you might want to take this training course again. Just a reminder on how we handle mobile orders versus in-store orders and how we prioritize them, etc. Right? But the notion of providing this ongoing real-time feedback is just hugely important, and just has huge impact to the employee feeling like they're connected in. And if you can associate these things with the goals that you've set for them and that they've acknowledged, which is something you can do in the Talent Reef platform, then now you're just giving them this real time feedback on how they're tracking against some of those goals, whether they be individual goals or store level, regional level, or even company level. Those are things that you can actually be doing in the Talent Reef platform. And as we see in the metric here, 80% of Gen Y prefer on-the-spot recognition over formal reviews. And again, we have this visual of a review being comprised more of this kind of a timeline graph of all of these different things that are happening. And then and this was just referenced a little bit on the slide I just showed, but I'll cover this a little bit separately, which is the notion of recognition. We love at Talent Reef in particular, we love to talk about the trophy generation because we have so many millennials that are working at our company. I know I have, as I mentioned, a couple millennial daughters and a Gen Zer, and this is just so true. They love recognition, right? So the ability to reinforce great behavior, especially as it relates to delivering exceptional customer experiences in a real-time way, just goes such a long way in making that employee feel connected with the business, with their job. And it gets back to especially the millennials looking for that, seeking that sense of purpose in their jobs, and that is even more important than what you're paying them, which we know they care about compensation as well. But this is a real biggie. So in the Talent Reef platform, we enable on-the-spot recognition. Just think of the way when you're done with an Uber drive, you can provide a rating and then can give the driver a badge, recognizing something good that they did. It's that same kind of interface, if you will, for a manager to just kind of whip out their phone and give a badge to an employee for different categories that would have been established ahead of time, and the employee receives that badge and perhaps a nice comment, and then the manager has an option to make that visible by everyone at that store, or perhaps within a region. We have also what we call the wall concept at each store, where when your employees at a location log in, they can see all of the recognition that their fellow coworkers have received, and they can actually make comments, give a thumbs up, and they can also do peer-to-peer recognition. What you're doing, though, most importantly, is you're connecting your employees to their goals, to the company's goals, and you're really creating a culture of performance, which at the end of the day is what's going to be driving the delivery of those exceptional customer experiences. And here we see in this survey, 69% of employees say they'd work harder if they felt efforts were recognized. So we feel really passionate about that. And again, the recognition that's given to employees would become part of their overall performance profile, again, in that kind of Facebook timeline graph representation. So managers now have just such an easy way to sit down and do those monthly reviews with employees. And now we'll speak a little bit to just-in-time training. I referenced this, earlier, but again, in our belief, and when I'm kind of traveling around the country and folks that I'm speaking with, they feel this really hits the mark. That training needs to be really lightweight. Upload a video or PDF. Could be simple. Could maybe be a policy that you want to make sure everyone's read and acknowledged, and maybe you have a couple questions that you want to ask after they've read something or watched a video. But the ability to assemble those things really quickly and disseminate them and track them, we believe is really the optimal way to keep your workforce trained. And again, it supports more of the notion of ongoing training and development versus more of a kind of big bang approach to kind of complex curriculums. Again, not to say maybe a curriculum based approach is working for your business, and that's totally fine. There may be some nuances there that call for that, but kind of what we're seeing in terms of the trend in the market is more of this lightweight approach. Again, mobile optimized as well. And then last but not least, I think this is one of the last ones here. Is the communication ability to do communications and regularly send out communications to your employees, and to be able to do that again at the store level, the regional level, the divisional level, and the corporate level. We've just found, I've just talked to so many companies in this space that just don't have a good mechanism for doing that today, right? We know that the mobile phone is the device of choice for your employees and managers. Of course, tablets are also something that can certainly be used in the stores. But really, we just can count on the mobile device as being something that we can leverage to distribute communications and acknowledge that communications have been received, and then include things in those communications that are important. They could be links or PDFs or videos. As well. And the most recent study I've seen reveals that I think it's 8 out of 10 hourly workers have a smartphone. And all of what I'm reviewing today, when I reference Talent Reef technology in particular, works for any phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. But my point being, the smartphone is just a great experience, delivers a great experience, and all of the things I'm talking about are optimized for any mobile device that your employees or managers might be using. But this gives just a great platform for doing those ongoing communications, which we find really helps with employee engagement and the overall employee experience. And then I thought this was the last one then. Okay, it was one off actually. So this is the last one before I'm just going to tie back to the very first slide for just 2 minutes and kind of summarize some things, and we'll go to Q&A. But the last one here is all about the pulse surveys. I'm sure you've heard of these. You're doing these with your customers probably today to gauge their experience in your store. It's the same paradigm with, in our minds, for employees, where when they've finished a shift, or maybe it's every week, or you could even do these once a month, you are sending a quick survey, pulse survey to your employees, where they can rate their experience, they can provide other feedback, really giving you the insights on the employee sentiment and how that's trending, and then right down to the employee level, if there are any changes, positive or negative, in some of their feedback, can really help drive more proactively the way that you're managing those employees. Or again, this could also be done at the store level as well. So that we feel is all part of a kind of a comprehensive way to engage your talent and really drive that experience. And I'm just going to go back to the very first slide, as if I haven't spent enough time on that one already, just to summarize a little bit here. And I think it'll make some sense. And this is really, for me, this is the, don't click too many here. This is really the nirvana, if you will, as I see it, in talking with so many of you and our customers alike. We believe that at the end of the day, data is going to really be your kind of your key ingredient to growing your business and beating your competition, and of course really driving those customer and employee experiences. So just real quick, in terms of how we see this shaping and kind of the direction that we're headed as a company from a technology standpoint, there's just such great data that is being captured today with a lot of your businesses, knowing that you've got your tablets and kiosks, the whole world of Internet of Things, and you've got POS systems where you're capturing customer data in a lot of cases for the first time for some businesses in the QSR space, where you're now able to do real CRM functionality and start to really gain insights into your customers' behaviors. Think for a minute about how powerful that data, things like the spend per shift, the customer feedback during a shift. Were they happy with their experience or unhappy with their experience? Did they provide feedback on any part of that experience, whether it's the product or the people, right? But think about taking that data and marrying that with your employee data, right? Things like, what kind of training have you provided for employees? What kind of performance management and feedback and recognition have you provided for employees, and comparing that against the shift data or store data in general, and starting to use AI and machine learning to do some recommendations for you, where you say something like, based on this customer's feedback. I mean, nothing better than hearing it from the horse's mouth. This employee that interacted with that customer, we should give them more training in this particular area that they were a little deficient, right? So you have the power of recommendations, and then that can further shape the training programs you're designing, the feedback and recognition that you're doling out, and that can just as easily begin to shape your applicant experience. And you think about your recruitment strategy. If you know who your top performers are, not only from the employee engagement and performance management tools that something like a Talent Reef provides, but again, hearing that directly from the customer in with their feedback and some of that data, right now you have a good feel for who your top employees are, because you've captured that information as part of your universe of data. Where did they come from? What was their background? What source did they come from? How do they perform on their assessments, etc. And you can really begin to optimize your recruitment strategy so that you're hiring the right people in the first place. So we really are excited, and just to make a little point, again, I'm trying to walk that fine line between sharing insights and talking about Talent Reef, but we've actually begun on our journey to establish the infrastructure for delivering on the artificial intelligence, machine learning, the recommendation engine that can be generated from this data. So my point being, without getting technical, is we're already collecting the data for employees and applicants, and really everything they're doing, every touch point, and we're building it in such a way that once we have customer data in our engine, we could be delivering on this really exciting analytics engine. So that right there summarizes the content I was prepared to cover today, and I believe we've got some time left over for some Q&A.
All right, indeed we do. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that great information. As Tim said, we are going to turn to questions from the audience. And again, to submit a question, simply click on the dialog box at the top right corner of your screen, and then click over to the questions tab. And we'll get to as many as we have time for in the few minutes we have left. Tim, first question, do you think other generations aside from millennials and Gen Zers have hopped on the social and instant recognition bandwagon too?
Yeah, I love that question. Actually, I get that quite a bit. And the reality is, you look at data, for example, from Facebook, and the number one generation on Facebook is the generation X and the baby boomers. Yeah, so and they're on it all the time. So they've certainly adopted social media, and then really from a standpoint of mobile phones, I mean, we all know they've become ubiquitous, and I would say they're generation neutral. So I get that question a lot. We talked so much today about millennials and Gen Zs, but that's why I kind of wove in earlier in my presentation that we see a big resurgence of baby boomers returning to work, and QSR types of businesses are great places for them. But they're absolutely connected in as it relates to technology that we've talked about that Talent Reef delivers. The mobile phone and kind of the whole social aspect of it. We see it highly embraced by all generations.
Okay, Tim, do you think they want all feedback, or is it just more positive feedback and recognition when there is a job well done?
Boy, what a cerebral question, and I love it. And the answer is so simple to me. And I related a little bit back. I hope I'm not talking too much about my own experience with my daughters, but I've seen their friends, coming and going, and especially millennials and Gen Z, just so open with with all forms of feedback. And I guess specifically as it relates to the work environment, the in particular millennials and Gen Zs, which do make up a big percentage here, guys, right? They are absolutely they welcome all sorts of feedback. They want constructive, they want honest feedback, they want transparency. Of course, they love the positive feedback. That's what they're really aspiring for. But yeah, they're open, and I would say more importantly, expecting transparency with that kind of feedback.
Okay, Tim, our next question. Even though there are long-term employees and they get their job done, would you recommend keeping them in some type of training?
Man, there's no such thing as somebody that's been overtrained. This is my personal. I think that's more of kind of my personal view of that would be, there's no such thing as you've kind of saturated your learning. Into a couple of earlier points I made, and we all know this in the QSR space, with all of these different dynamics that have emerged and different dietary concerns now and menu changes and just all these different things we discussed. I think the learning is actually more important now than maybe it was 5 or 10 years ago.
All right, Tim. Do you worry about survey fatigue with that much constant feedback?
I actually do. So that's why, and what we've done in our platform is we have we allow our customers to set the frequency by which they either can provide feedback or accept feedback for different things. For example, getting a pulse on how somebody's feeling. You may be doing that after every shift isn't the right way to do that. But again, you might have employees that are only working once a week, and in that case, it might work, and you can set that rule in our system. If you have an employee that's working, several days a week, you might want to wait till the end of the week, or again, you could do some of these things monthly, and that relates specifically to the kind of the pulse surveys that I talked about. In terms of any of the feedback and recognition, I think that should just be spontaneous.
Okay, Tim, it looks like that's all we have for today. So I want to thank you for your time and for the considerable expertise you've shared with us. Many thanks to Talent Reef for making this program possible, and of course to our audience for attending. Recording of the webinar will be available shortly, and we'll send out an email to you letting you know when that's available. Thanks again, and everyone have a great day.